I'm really excited today because I have someone that I've actually gotten to meet during quarantine, but have gotten to know really well. And she is phenomenal when it comes to self-awareness, self-development, leadership, and mindfulness. So, Erin, welcome.
Thanks, Benny. Happy to be here.
No, I'm really happy to have you on here too. And we talked about, what I'd like you to talk about. But before that, if you can talk about yourself and tell me a little bit about you and what you do and your business and background and so forth.
Yeah, sure. So to keep it fairly succinct, I have spent 17 years in corporate America, technology, finance, commercial real estate. And a lot of my journey in the corporate world was sort of filled with anxiety and stress and a lot of things that can be really easy to look at in our external environment and to point fingers and to blame on whether it's the organization or our coworkers or the type of work we're doing, et cetera. And for me, even though I did that for many years, what I realized going back, I would say almost 4 years ago, is that a lot of that was brought on by myself. It was not necessarily the fault of other people or the organization or the culture, but it was the way that I was managing certain situations and I was managing my own emotions. Or in fact, it's the lack of managing my emotions. It was my lack of self-awareness. And so, my background is very adverse. I grew up very poor, definitely was not around a family that had instilled emotional awareness within my siblings and I. So I never really knew how to feel or how to manage high anxiety and high stress and cultures that were very competitive. But I figured out how to play that game pretty well in corporate America. And then fast forward to that point 4 years ago, like I said, where I just started to look at everything differently in my life. And I just started to assess the meaning of the life that I've created. And
Was there a certain point? Was there a certain point that made you realize that? Like, was there a certain event or was it just accumulation?
Yeah, it was an accumulation. For a lot of people, there's like a wake up point. There's a calling or there's a situation that happens. They get sick, someone else gets sick, someone passes, there's an accident. For me, I actually think I had this calling a few different times in my adult life and I ignored it. And there were certainly things like physiological responses to stress and things that were really calling for my attention that I might not have paid attention to till that pivotal moment 4 years ago. I just started to speak words out loud that I'd never said before. And it was, what is the meaning of this life? And I said it to my husband one night. And then I kid you not, after that, the opportunities, the people, the relationships that I started to build and started to cultivate in my life that were totally different than anything else I'd ever focused on were like, it's so apparent and so obvious. And so something shifted for me and starting to question the life that I had built.
Got it. Okay. And you and I've had several conversations about your whole story. So if people want to hear that, they can always connect with you one-on-one. So one of the things that I really wanted you to explain is the meaning of mindfulness, because it's a word that's being used a lot, like empathy, for example. I feel like people use it without really understanding what it really is. So can you give can you tell me what that word mindfulness means to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's funny because the word mindfulness is tricky, right? Because it doesn't mean to be more full in the mind. It actually means to be less in the mind. So people have to be very clear on what it is. My definition is that in every single moment, we choose how we act or react in a situation. We choose how we act or react to our emotional experiences. Now, it comes down to self-awareness. Mindfulness means being self-aware, because in order to be present, you have to be aware of what it is you're feeling. Otherwise, guess what happens? You react unconsciously, which is where human beings spend 95% of their time, in the unconscious mind.
Got it. Okay. So take that a step further, because, meditation has been something that I've been working on for the last like 5, 6 years, 7 years, but there's a lot that goes into meditation, yet there's nothing that goes into meditation. Right. And it's like, it's hard to explain that to people sometimes. And I wouldn't be able to do it justice by talking about it, but especially with everything that we have going on right now and what we're probably going to have to go through, with how different the holidays are going to be, the stress that people are facing at work. I want people to if they want to start a meditation practice, I want them to be able to start it with some clear direction.
Yeah.
So if you can just talk about that, and if you could talk about, how to meditate or what works for you, or give details about the concept of it, that'd be great.
Yeah. So I work with a lot of executives. I have men's and women's executive groups, and they're intimate. They're 14 people each, and I run them quarterly. And I will tell you, every time I start one of these, about half the group has been meditating for some time and half the group has not at all. And I have all of them start in silent meditation. Now, I don't recommend to just anyone to do that, but I will say you can fast track yourself if you meditate in silence. And here's the reason why. When we do guided meditation, which I love, and I'm a big proponent of it as a good practice to get you into more of a cadence of meditation. But when we meditate in silence, so even if you only do this once a week for 5 minutes, you are rewiring your brain and you are training yourself in a way that you're not doing when your conscious mind is listening to someone's voice or listening to music. So being with yourself in silence is going to do things that you don't necessarily feel and that you certainly don't see, but that are really happening on an energetic level in your body. So it's really important to at least get, like I said, 5 minutes a week, just sit in silence. You don't even have to call it meditation if it terrifies you. Big thing is that it's a total myth that your mind is going to shut down or that you're not going to have thoughts. You're going to have thoughts, and that is perfectly okay and normal.
So can you explain that a little bit? Because that's where people get really confused. And I did when I first started. It was almost like torture. And that's when I realized my mind is so all over the place, right? Yeah. The monkey mind. So Can you just explain that, like just sitting down and observing versus trying not to think?
Yeah. So when you are sitting in silence or when you're meditating, your entire brain is functioning. It would be impossible not to have a thought. Your entire brain is working. Now, most of the time, like, we're only using a very small portion of our brain. When we're in an intellectual thinking state, which is a lot of our waking hours, we are in a monkey mind scenario where there's always things happening. And when we're meditating, our entire brain is functioning. So there's even more happening. Now, we don't always know that. We cannot see it. We don't necessarily feel it. But energetically, there are things even in the nervous system that are happening. There's all kinds of regeneration, reorganization, and transformation happening in the nervous system in your brain. So, and no, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I have read quite a bit about this because it intrigues me. But what I will tell you is that when we meditate, we are truly cultivating a relationship to our authenticity, to our authentic self. That authentic self lives in the heart, and it has an intelligence of its own. It's called your human spirit, your spark, your light, whatever you want to deem that, but it's real. You don't relate to that most of the time during your day or your evenings until you sit down or get quiet with yourself. So whether you call it meditation or not, whether you do this as a walking scenario, like a lot of people call it walking meditation, it's just a matter of allowing yourself to be present with yourself. It's not about ignoring thoughts. It's not about sitting a certain way or holding your hands a certain way or having crystals or anything like that. It's just a practice of being in solitude with you.